Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Blabbit. It's episode 50. Paul, how did we get to 50 episodes?
I guess we didn't pay close enough attention and we just, let it just kept rewinding every month.
I guess so. Well, welcome, everyone. We're very honored to have Jennifer Garman on here with us today. For those of you who may be on here for the first time, we're going to do some introductions briefly. My name is Glenn Ingram. I've been working in coaching, teaching, mentoring people in the sales industry or sales environment for about 2 decades now, just trying to help people become better communicators and better listeners so they can communicate better. Paul, how about you?
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Blabbit. My name is Paul Geiger. I am a New York City public speaking coach and presentation expert. I help my clients and the groups that I work with to discover the stories that really define them, and then give them the tools they need to actually deliver those messages with a lot of confidence and a lot of success. It usually works. Jennifer?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Garman. I am the author of Flourish, 7 Ways Gratitude Can Transform Your Life. I'm also the founder and CEO of gratitudemission.org, and I am a transformational life coach to overwhelmed working moms.
Well, welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us. We're going to jump into something selfishly on my part, that I noticed something about gratitude and helping with sleep. And as someone that sleep is okay, I just take naps periodically, more than sleeping. So I'd like to listen or learn a little bit more about that, if you would.
I'd love to talk about this topic. You want me to back up into my story because it kind of proceeds into this pretty well. So this was a while ago, over a decade ago now, that I was chugging along. I had 3 very young kids. I had twins that were 3. My youngest had just turned 1. And I was, working, had a lot of balls in the air. And I thought I was doing pretty well. I was, chugging along, kept adding to my plate, thinking like, okay, I got this. I can add something else. And I was balancing this tray that was incredibly high up, if you can imagine, with just tons and tons of stuff. And one day my body just said enough and literally shut down. It was like I attribute it to someone flipping a light switch. It was literally that stark. I just could not sleep for the life of me. I did not have any added stress. I didn't have any, trauma that I was going through at the time. I just had so much on my plate that my body just shut down. And this absolute insomnia lasted night after night. And when I say insomnia, I mean, I would look at the clock, I'd close my eyes, I'd look at the clock again thinking, oh, a half hour, an hour passed, 2 minutes had passed. And this was my nights for the next 3 or 4 nights till I dragged myself to the doctor, almost in tears, going, what's going on? I've never had a problem with sleep. I can't sleep. I can't function. I can't take care of my kids. I don't even feel comfortable getting behind the wheel and driving a car. And it was a point of, desperation that I sought help from my doctor. And unfortunately, that led me down the path of, try this pill, try this one. Let's, spend 5 minutes here and try a different pill. And I went down this rabbit hole of Western medicine, as I call it, of band-aiding symptom after symptom. So at first, the insomnia got a little bit better as I got on medications, but I didn't feel like myself whatsoever. And more and more symptoms started appearing to the point where I was now seeking after specialists, and my health had become it had gotten into a real crisis mode, and I didn't really know what to do. It was about the 7-year mark, a little after the 7-year mark, that I was just like, what else can I do that I haven't tried yet? And I just got this overwhelming sense of peace that, this isn't terminal. This is going to resolve itself. You need to try and pick up your pieces as best you can and do something with your life to get, passion back in. And at that time, I was drawn into studying to be a life coach. And in my studies, I came across the notion of gratitude. That was first and foremost. And then also neuroplasticity. And these were 2 things that I didn't really have any experience or knowledge about. And I became fascinated with the 2 topics. So much so that in my studies to be a life coach, I actually used the techniques that I learned on myself to practice and to kind of say like, okay, well, let's see how powerful is this stuff. And I kid you not, within a couple of days of practicing this, I noticed two things. One was that my sleep had improved dramatically. And two is that my energy shot through the roof. And I know they're combined. It's kind of chicken and the egg, what happened first. But I like to think it was probably sleep, because without sleep, you have no energy. Mm-hmm. And I was astounded. And I was, in such a better mood after just a couple of days. So I kept the practice up. And within a month's time, every single symptom that I had complained about to doctor after doctor was gone. And being trained as an engineer, I didn't think that this was going to last. I kind of had these, what I call renaissance periods within that 7-year time, where I felt a little bit better and then things would go back to being worse again. But I decided to do a deep dive into these studies and really dig into, what was it about these things that I had found that worked, or that maybe, gave me some temporary relief. And the more I dug in and studied, the more profound it became that, wow, this is the real deal. And I need to really do a very deep dive into this to maybe help others in my pursuit of being a life coach. So that's kind of where things led. And I ended up starting gratitudemission.org. That was the first thing I did, because I wanted to teach this to my children. I wanted to teach the power of, a grateful mindset to my kids, so that they could enjoy a happy, full life. And then that led into the opportunity to write my book. And it's just kind of been this overwhelming, one door has opened after the next, and it's been an incredible journey for me. But one of the things that I absolutely love to talk about is sleep, because that was the very first thing that resolved when I embraced gratitude and I embraced neuroplasticity. My body was just like, okay, I'm on board. I'm going to heal. I'm going to do this for you. And I'm first going to give you sleep.
As you're telling this story, I'm sitting here fascinated, because I have heard so many people recount almost exactly the same story that we have just talked about. This happening in so many people's lives. And anybody who is watching this right now, or watching this in the future as a replay, I'm sure they're saying right now, Jennifer, what's the first thing that I need to do? And that I'm doing this for the benefit of all of our listeners who have gone through exactly the same sort of experience. Yeah, sleep would be a nice thing to get back first.
Absolutely. You got to start somewhere, and that's a great place to start.
So how do you do it? How do you set your mind straight? Because it sounds like you're talking about, it's not hocus pocus when I say mind over matter, because it is mindset, is it not?
It absolutely is. And mindset, it scares a lot of people. And honestly, it's not an easy thing to go from like anxious, frustrated, depressed to positive and grateful. It's actually it's a big jump, so to speak. And that's where gratitude comes in as such a magical transformation, because everybody can probably think back to a time where they were grateful and what they felt like when they were truly grateful for something. And I don't mean like, oh, you just held the door for me, thank you. Or, I just, you just, saved me a minute of my time, thank you. I'm talking about like, you pulled my dog out of the street, you almost got hit by a car, thank you. Like that feeling of just deep, deep gratitude. And I think we can all look back on a time where we felt like that. And that is the feeling we need to harness. Because when we harness that feeling, that is where the transformation happens. And you were going to say something, Paul?
Yes. And Glenn, let me just jump in here for 1 second and relate this to something that has been a recurring theme here on Blabbit. When you say gratitude, the first thing I think about as a public speaking coach and a storyteller and someone who discovers people's stories is, if you need to shake off the old mindset and maybe grab a little bit of the new, I often lead people down the path first. First step is to think about a mentor in their life. Because if that is not the essence of gratitude, that feeling toward that person, the humility of admitting that someone showed you the way, somebody made it possible for you to be where you are. Is there a connection there? I'm just wondering. And if there isn't, that's okay too, but that's just what it makes me think of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think everybody that is an entrepreneur can look back on someone that's profoundly helped them and think, wow, that the immense gratitude and the willingness and the desire to give back to someone else too. That's another thing I think of when I think of that, because how profoundly they changed your path and your trajectory, you want to do that for someone else. So it kind of pays it forward, so to speak. But to come back to the sleep thing, so I'm talking about this feeling of gratitude. And that is what you want to harness. And just, a couple of things before you fall asleep at night or as you're part of your bedtime routine, but bring this feeling into it. Joe Dispenza loves to say a clear intention married with an elevated feeling, gratitude being that feeling, is what turns into the desired outcome. And so you're marrying this feeling of gratitude with something you're actually grateful for. And the more you do this, so just three things at night. And then if you want to really turbocharge it, 3 things right when you wake up. And you can write these down too to further ingrain it in or say them out loud. That's even, bolstering it even more. But doing this practice over a couple weeks, month or 2 time, you're going to be amazed at your perspective shift. And of all the things that you used to focus on that are going wrong, it slowly shifts over to, wow, I got all this stuff going right. And I'm so blessed and I'm so grateful. And that transformation happens rather quickly. The more you do it, the quicker it happens.
When we're talking about mindset, what comes to mind is so often I hear people, when I was training salespeople, working with them saying, well, what if this happens? Well, what if that happens? And I would respond with, what if it doesn't?
Absolutely.
So when I think it's kind of native to us as humans to automatically let negative thoughts filter into when we're planning, preparing, or thinking about something, how do we go about changing our mindset so that we can get away from that and realizing that, karma is kind of a fickle thing. If you put positive things out there, you probably are going to get positive things back. Kind of like the old saying, if you think you can, you're right. And if you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah, well, we're hardwired with a propensity towards negative. There could be 10 things in our life going well, 1 thing going wrong, and we're going to focus on that 1 thing going wrong and forget about the other 10. That's just how we're hardwired. So if we kind of come into it knowing that and saying, okay, I probably need to do a little working out at the gym and building up this gratitude muscle because right now it's non-existent. I don't see it. And have the mindset of, this is something that it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to do it tonight and notice the next day, wow, I feel grateful. I'm such a changed person. It's going to take time. But putting the effort and that time into it, you're really going to reap great benefits from doing it.
So kind of like going to the gym, it took me a while to get this far to shape. It might take me a little while to get back into shape physically or mentally.
Exactly. I like to use that exact analogy. It's a muscle. You got to build that muscle up. And the great thing about building that muscle up is you're going to be setting yourself up for when adversity hits, because it's not a question of if something is coming, it's a question of when. And I think we can all relate to being completely blindsided by something hitting us out of left field. But if you've got this gratitude muscle built up, you can easily shift your perspective to, wait a minute, this is happening, but I've got all this going on too. Versus I'm going to go down this rabbit hole of like, oh, this is happening. What if this could happen? And, we all know what happens when we go down that road.
Well, what's wonderful about this whole approach, Jennifer, is the fact that, yes, we all know what best practices are. In other words, I should really eat more vegetables and I should do this and that, but I can kind of put that off. But the wonderful thing about the gratitude muscle is if you work on it and you make it a point, a discipline to work on it right when you go to bed as a means to get you to sleep, well, then that will become habitual. You will do that on a regular basis. I mean, provided that you do it the right way and you're able to push away those negative thoughts that are, as we all know, it's part of our survival mechanism.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So here's a question I have. And have you looked into this kind of like in this relationship, what Paul was just talking to, and like psychocybernetics?
Psychocybernetics. I have not heard that term before, but I'm intrigued. I'm going to go look it up as soon as this is over.
The perception, let's say, of a coach that I had when I was in high school was talking about the night before the game. Remember, visualize yourself doing X, visualize yourself doing Y. And then you'll be surprised that you'll encounter something similar to that. And all of a sudden it's muscle memory instead of reaction.
Yes. No, now I know what you're talking about. Absolutely. And this is kind of like, step 2 in terms of, okay, we practice gratitude. Now we kind of want to bring in what we expect to happen next. When we've encompassed this feeling and we're in the state of gratitude, okay, let's transfer that feeling into the future and say like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to expect client X to call me back or to have a great experience with this person or this child that's been, we've been butting heads recently, and have that expectation along with that feeling of gratitude. And that's really where the magic starts to happen, because then you are setting your future up for good things to come in. And this is something that I absolutely love to talk about as well, because I can attest to this. And I was the biggest naysayer that this is all woo-woo hokey stuff until I started doing it. And to see like obstacles melt away and passive resistance literally change to no resistance based on putting a great feeling of gratitude out there for what I want to bring into my life in the future. And it's really magical and powerful what can happen that, you put your thoughts and your mindset with a powerful motion too.
Am I simplifying it too much to say that the long scientific name neuroplasticity just means have a flexible mind?
Yeah, well, neuroplasticity is a flexible mind, but it's also the ability for our brains to rewire. So if you think of things like if you think of a pathway, like a dirt road pathway, and you think of this as a negative habit, something that, I keep doing, I keep emotionally eating. But this is my dirt pathway that I have treaded down time and time and time again. And this is deeply ingrained in my brain. I want to get out of that. So I'm going to have to go over this way into the forest, and I'm going to have to push through bushes and trees and underbrush, and I'm going to have to forge a new pathway. But the first time I go down it, there's really not going to be a path there. I'm going to have to do that again and again. And that's where the ability to do that is here for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're 2 or 92 years old, you can rewire your brain, but you have to have the intent to do it. And you have to have extra tools to do it too. But it's absolutely possible to do.
Well, so much of what we do is based on that repetition. I smile and I chuckle because I use the exact same metaphor to describe storytelling. I say, listen, the first time you're going to tell this story that we have now discovered as a part of your life experience, it will be like blazing a trail, a path. But the more that you do it, more will be cleared away. The steps will be more familiar. There will be a path that you can clearly see from beginning to end, or at least you know where it's going. And then it becomes a lot easier. You're right. In the beginning, just hacking your way through it can be tough.
Yes, and we love habits. We love to be habitual. That's where we resonate with, and we will always defer to habitual over something that's harder and against the grain. But like you said, the more you do it, the more it becomes in there. And there's some neuroplasticity tricks too that I like to share with my clients on how to deeper ingrain that quicker.
Okay, now let me ask you this. When the normal trials and tribulations of the day, in your experience, when you started to do this, but when the normal triggers that normally make us feel kind of overwhelmed, whatever they are, the responsibilities, the obligations, when they start to come in, what is that feeling like? Do you feel at all stronger? Are you able to just brush it off a little bit in the beginning? I mean, I'm just trying to get an idea of what that transformation starts to feel like in the beginning.
Yeah, the way I would describe those triggers and the things coming in is like a contrast. And at first, it's not a big contrast. It's just like a slightly noticeable contrast to where, okay, I may have just had a gut reaction to this before, but now I notice that it's coming. It's different from the state I'm in. So how am I going to handle it? And that was the big aha, is like, okay, these things used to send me, I'd be flying off the handle for them, but now I realize them and I can make a different choice. And not always, some things would still send you off the handle, but it's more of an awareness and a contrast. And like the more you practice it, the awareness and the contrast will grow stronger and stronger to the point where now you're just not aware, but now you can change how you react to those things. And then once you change how you react to those things, eventually you'll stop even being triggered or reacting to them at all.
And it's really important to do that when you have twins, I believe. Most people don't understand that.
Yes. Well, the funny thing is, my twins are my easy two, and then my third one, she was the we like to call her triplets in one child.
Well, you know, I had Irish twins, so they say, very close together, 14 and a half months. Does that count? Am I
That
in the
counts.
club?
Yes.
My dad said he thought it would, but the first time he was around when our girls were young, he said, "Nah, I was wrong, son. This is insane."
Exactly. So, is there the maintenance of this? Are there any mantras or anything that you tell yourself, or is everything unique and personal when it comes to what each person is grateful for? Or are there categories that you can steer some of our audience toward to, well, start by thinking about this?
Yeah, well, all the above. It kind of depends on where you are. So you kind of start with where you are. I've had clients that come to me and say, you know what? I am so angry, depressed, anxious, you name it, that I am not grateful for a single thing. And that's when I say, okay, we got to start with your breath, because you always have something. And we got to start with the fact that you are alive and breathing and your heart is beating. And we got to go from there. Baby steps, baby steps. But then I've got other people that say, okay, you know what? I'm grateful for certain things, but I just want to take it to another level. And that's when I suggest saying, like, okay, let's go take a walk out in nature and just be in awe of all of the symbiotic things that are happening that we can't even, I mean, if we took a pen and tried to write these down, it would take weeks to write down all of the stuff that's happening just naturally out in a 5-minute walk. And, you know, the environment and how the ecosystem all works together, and the seasons. And it's awe-inspiring, actually. And if you just take a little bit of that gratitude in, going like, okay, all this is happening and things are going to be okay for me too. But there's so many different paths that you can start from, and there's so many different ways that you can take it to the next level, if that makes sense.
Sure. So Glenn, what is your meditation walk there in Huntington Beach? What do you do? I mean, the answer almost sounds obvious, but what do you do in Huntington Beach?
The only reason I can think of to live in a crazy place like this is to be able to walk by the ocean and hear those sounds, or drive by it. That's what I do periodically when I don't have much time. Is literally I put the top down and drive up and down PCH for a bit, hear, smell, and just get into that peaceful place. Because for quite a few of us, water is very soothing and peaceful. Absolutely. And that ocean sound is just amazing.
I actually live on a small island that's really close to the Jersey coast. And so, you know, I go to the beach same way. I'm just looking at a slightly different ocean. And you get to watch the sunsets, and I occasionally see the sunrises. But yes, feet in the sand is a nice thing.
Oh, it's so therapeutic. And I can say, from a person that practices gratitude, I have a little twinge of jealousy from both of you right now, because there is nothing like walking on the beach as a reset. If you have water, a lake, a beach, any body of water near you, that is the most incredible reset. But a close second is a walk out in nature. Not quite the same as the beach.
No, but I'll tell you, my experience just being out west in, you know, the mountainous areas out west, even in Arizona, you know, just being amongst nature. You can either be amongst the trees or you can be amongst the rocks. If you just tune into it, it's an incredible experience. And I think we can find that. I mean, I tell you, I'm very grateful when I do go into New York City for the amazing parks system that they have there. If you've never taken the time to explore Central Park, it's as if somebody had gratitude in mind. They really did. In this sea of chaos, which is New York City, then you go into Central Park and it's like you're somewhere else. Certain parts, obviously.
And there's actually a term for that. It's called forest bathing. And it's something that they're talking about a lot now as a way to counteract, you know, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, just, you know, all the negative things that we're dealing with on such a daily basis. That, you know, even 5-10 minute walk out in nature in the forest and just taking it all in, breathing that air, it's really therapeutic.
Now, for almost anybody, if you happen to be in a landlocked state, is it true? Have you ever heard that simply staring at something that's green, just vegetation, grass, trees, bushes, whatever it might be, doesn't that also elicit a bit of a peaceful feeling?
Oh, absolutely. And you can even take that a step further. If you can touch a tree or take your shoes off and touch the ground, there's something called earthing. And I believe there's a lot to this because, as you probably know, everything is energy, absolutely everything. And when we can tune into, energy that's beyond ourselves, it refreshes and renews us so completely. That's why, petting or interacting with a pet feels so good. Or just, walking in the sand feels so good because you're getting the negative ions out and you're bringing in the good ions and you're replacing that and replenishing. So anytime you can interact energetically with another being or even a plant, I love to just touch a tree. I don't hug it, but I just kind of sit there and I put my hands on it. And it's really powerful, just, even 30 seconds to a minute of doing that. And I just feel like, wow, that took all my negative energy and gave me something positive.
Well, and when you talk about energies, some people believe in these things more than others, but it's amazing that whether we're in Crystal Cove down in Laguna, Malibu, or if we're in Red Rock in Las Vegas, we'll go for hikes and we're always taking pictures of things around there. And inevitably, every time we are on one of those hikes, we'll end up with orbs in our photos.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's kind of interesting, other energies that you may be exposing yourself to that you really don't think about.
Yeah, I'm of the perspective now that there is so much we don't know. And I'm so open-minded to hearing about everybody's experiences and it's incredible, like the things that people have experienced and found. It's really profound, all of these things like the orbs and the energies. And I'm sure that stuff is out there.
Yeah, it's just hard when you see 4 pictures you're taking down the same path and the orb moves across the path while you're walking. It's like you don't even see this while you're around there, but it's kind of interesting.
That's really cool.
So tell us a little bit, Jennifer, about writing your book about Flourish. And obviously you have quite a story to share. Is the book based on that transformation that you actually went through? And is it steps that people can take? Just describe what the whole mission statement of the book really is.
Absolutely. So the book is really a deep dive into the research of gratitude, and it encompasses my story. I bring several other people's stories in as well and their profound experience with gratitude. And I kind of interweave that into various aspects where gratitude really can affect your life in a positive way. I talk about self-worth. I talk about relationships with other people. I talk about your physical health, your mental health, including sleep. And then I get into things like happiness and abundance and, the more metaphysical stuff towards the end. But then my book kind of goes into a how-to at the last few chapters, whereas this is what I did. This is how I transformed from, my life of probably 25% vitality and barely getting through the day and just really grappling with the fact that, how am I going to do another day of this to I wake up with, just boundless energy. I don't touch caffeine. I get fantastic sleep at night. And I'm so on fire to share with as many other people as I can what happened to me and how somehow, how I can share this with them and help them get through whatever they're going through.
Now, I know that for many people and many people that I've spoken to recently and even during my life, just the idea of having, as you mentioned, so many responsibilities, so many obligations. How do we put aside the worry? Because as you said, I understand we have to work that gratitude muscle so that we're ready when adversity hits or when circumstances change. But how do you get beyond without being what some people would term a Pollyanna, like just ignoring what is going on? How do you compartmentalize the worry?
Yeah, worry is a tough one because worry correlates with anxiety, which correlates with future focus. So I am focused on something that may or may not happen, or that I've construed in my head as things are going to go this way, where in reality, do you really know that things are going to go this exact way that you have built up in your head? So on the flip side, depression is too much focus on the past. So where we ideally want to be, and this is, what gratitude beautifully brings us into, is right in the present moment. And the more we can live in the present moment, the more worry and depression, they don't live there. They can't live in the present because you can't worry and be in the present. It's not possible to do that. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. You know, that theme comes up a lot as well, being present in the moment. And that makes a lot of sense, because if you're worried about what's going to happen in the future, or if you're dragging around what happened in the past, then you don't give yourself that opportunity. And I understand that gratitude is actually experiencing a feeling in the now.
Yes.
Even though
You're
it could
bringing yourself into the now.
Right. I mean, it could be based on something you're thinking about in the past that you're grateful for, something that occurred in the past. But you're right. You're giving that feeling to yourself in the present.
Exactly. You got it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of relevant to that commercial I've been seeing all over about the guy from Hangover that's the soccer coach. And he says, right now is a gift. That's why they call it the present.
I love that. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Ted Lasso. Right. Yeah. I love that one. So for how long has Gratitude Mission been up and running and affecting people's lives?
I'm going on 4 years right now with Gratitude Mission. It's kind of morphed as I've done it. I developed a growing gratitude tree, which is a vinyl wall decal. It sticks to your wall, and you add to it on a daily, weekly basis all the things you're grateful for, so that it becomes a visual reminder of everything that you have in your life. And the purpose of that is that so you can, if you're walking by and you're frustrated or you're rushed or you're hurried, worried, any negative emotion, you can take a glance at this tree and it'll bring you back to the perspective of, oh, okay, in the present, and I have all this. This, what I'm worried about is, 5% of the pie, but 95% of my pie is going really well. And it's just a great perspective shift. And it's really kind of morphed into, now I'm selling this to school systems, and they're embracing it to, especially with COVID and everybody coming back into, hopefully this fall, in person for everyone class studies. Things like gratitude are more important than ever, to teach this to kids that, yeah, even though this pandemic is going on, the last year and a half looked like this, we can be grateful for so much.
Yeah, and we have brought up, even though we only touch on it just to be cognizant of the situation that's going on, but in so many ways, we feel we're all feeling a little bit divided. But in a lot of ways, because we've gone through this similar experience, there is a commonality to what needs to happen, what has happened, and what needs to happen, just in terms of allowing us to not be fearful. I mean, we've just gone through and are still experiencing a very fearful time. So I would suspect that people are reaching out to you quite a bit for that ability to be grateful for what's going on. It's hard. It can be hard to find.
Yes. Well, fear correlates into worry, correlates into anxiety in the future. So it's all about, like, you've got to get out of that mindset of, what if this happens? What if that happens? Worst case scenario thinking. And just bring it back to, like, hey, you just survived the last year and a half and you were fine. And maybe you knew some people that weren't, but we have a lot more information and knowledge now than we had back then when this all started. So, just kind of breaking down that fear and, just chunking it down piece by piece and getting to the core of, like, well, what's really causing this? And then we can bring gratitude in and replace it.
Well, and don't you find, as we keep talking about this past year and a half, that if you really look at this from a kind of a psychological aspect, it's proof that fear is paralyzing. So
absolutely.
If you don't find a way to be able to react and overcome it, it's very easy just to kind of wallow in it, if you will.
Yes, and I love to tell a story of paralyzing fear, because when I met my husband and we were still dating, we decided to go skydiving. And we went to this place in Texas, this little hole-in-the-wall place with this rickety plane. And I kid you not, I was more afraid to stay in this plane than get out of it. But when the time came to get out, I couldn't move. I was so afraid. And luckily, I was doing a tandem skydive with a professional strapped to me, and he didn't give me the choice. We just went. But had it been up to me, I don't think I would have gone. I think I would have stayed there in that door and said, I can't do this. I can't jump. I can't move a muscle. But that's how paralyzing fear truly is. We need somebody to come along and help us sometimes when it gets to that point. And that's what we're all made to interact and to help each other out and to live in communities. And the communal energy is so powerful. So I think that was the hardest part for me during the shutdown, was that was all cut off for a certain amount of time. And I was able to reconnect with people via Zoom and stuff like that, but it was not the same as in person. So that was a big challenge for me to be missing that.
I think it's hard for many of us to actually be able to ask for the help. So I really appreciate you being able to share this story, because like I said, it's very common, and worry and anxiety can really stop us. We tend to play out stories in our heads sometimes that are not true, but those become the stories that we tell ourselves, and ultimately they seep into the stories that we tell others.
Yes, and I love what the Olympics is doing right now with the whole aspect of mental health. I absolutely love that self-care is up there. Mental health and taking care of what you need now is just in the spotlight, and because it's so, so important. And we need to put ourselves first and our self-care first, because if we don't, terrible things can happen. And I love what Simone Biles did and said, you know what? I'm not in this. I'm not in the mental space to be in this right now. I'm going to bow out, not only for my own safety, but for my team. And I think that was so brave of her. And, I can't imagine having practiced and put all the work that she had into getting up to that moment and saying, you know what, this is the best interest of everybody, even though it's probably not what I want and what I've strive for. This is what I'm going to do. That was just so powerful for me to see her do that.
But the one thing I think personally for me, and I know we all have different opinions, that's really been pointed out with this is what's frustrating the heck out of the last year and a half is some of the stuff that went into her mindset. You have to struggle to get the information. Some people have bad opinions about her because of what they're reading from story article A, B, or C, because they're getting a small snapshot, not the true reason that went behind some of the things that became mental with her and gave her a mental block. It's just a shame that we can't actually get true information from something like this when she's willing to be, forthwith and share it with people.
Yeah, I also think it's a shame that people just jump to judgments and to conclusions without really digging in, saying like, okay, well, what's all behind this? I'm going to just say, well, this is what I think because I took, a minute to think about it. And that's my judgment and my opinion.
You're right. So much of what we're discussing here, there is stigma attached to it.
Yeah. We should start calling it the nightly opinion, not the nightly news.
There's that too.
Let's talk about that just for a little bit more with regards to like Simone. It's so hard when you are a competitive person. A lot of us are very competitive by nature to admit that we have a shortcoming, that we're having an issue and stuff like this. So from your experience with dealing with this, how do people, acknowledgement, like they said, whether we're talking about a drug addiction, alcohol addiction, or any type of thing, acknowledgement's the first step. And sometimes that first step's the hardest step. So how does someone go about identifying this to know that they need to start getting some type of help?
Yeah, well, what I do with my clients is we point to the past and we look for evidence in the past where they've overcome something before. And we kind of go through that and say, well, what did you feel like going into this? And when it came, how did that change how you felt? And we kind of go through, we build up all the evidence that, hey, you got through something very traumatic before in your life. Why is there not evidence that you can do this again? And then we kind of also tie that into how much did you grow when you went through this ordeal? Because the truth of the matter is, if we are not dealt adversities in our lives and things that we, hurdles that seem insurmountable that we got to somehow get past, we're not going to grow. We're going to just stay in a stagnant, potentially toddler mindset where, nothing happens that's extraordinary, but maybe nothing happens that's bad either. But who wants to live that life? You want to grow and you want to strive and you want to do more and be more. And many people have, an aspiration to help others and to change the world. You can't do that without going through adversity first.
Back to the old adage, what does not kill us makes us stronger.
Well, and what I always say, Glenn, challenges are just opportunities.
Yeah.
If you look at it that way.
Back to the sales. No may not mean no forever. No just means no right now.
All right. And welcome everyone to the quotable hour. Jennifer, your turn. What have you got? Top of mind. When anybody asks you about gratitude mission, what do you say? Do you have a one sentence that you say about it?
It really depends more on the conversation, but my favorite quote is, I I've got several of them. I'm trying to decipher here. What do I really want to say?
Oh, give us all of them. Come on.
So, well, for mindset is whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And that is Henry Ford. I love that one because it's so true. And then the other thing is truly about gratitude and about it being life changing. And it's when you think of everything that you do have, you realize that you have so much. And I'm blanking on the quote that I use all the time. It'll come to me, but it's truly powerful. Like when you focus on what you do have. Oh, okay. When you focus on what you do have, you get more. When you focus on what you don't have, you get more. And that's exactly true because what you focus on expands. And that's probably what I would say is my favorite saying of all times is what you focus on expands because it's true. Do you want to focus on the negative and get more negative? Or do you want to focus on the positive and get so much more positive?
Well, how about this one then? In sort of street vernacular, you are what you eat. And I ain't talking about food.
You are what you think.
Yeah, same sort of thing. Okay, so let's talk about limiting beliefs. Let's talk about predetermining what things are in the context of convincing people to come along for this journey because it really is for their own good. What I go through is I always say, gee, I really wish that not just at the professional level that people would work with me because the work that I do just makes them feel so much more confident and just really allows them to really maximize their success and just reduce any anxiety that they might have and really empowers them. And I love that. Professionals tend to work with me, but I do work with some college students and I applaud that they jump in. But ideally, I really want to be able to reach high school students and even middle school students.
Wow.
So I haven't quite cracked that code yet because I often feel like I'm the parent saying, you really need to work on public speaking. It's a part of everything that you're ever going to do in business. And I kind of sound like the guy who goes, you really should brush your teeth every day. Or the other one who goes, you've got to have 5 servings of vegetables, and teenagers are going to go, yeah, okay. That's not trending. So what do? You said that you've been contacted by a bunch of schools. Are you starting to refine that message? How do you reach the kids?
Yeah, so you have to reach the kids on their level. And you always have to go at who you're talking to. I mean, you probably know this based on where they can relate to you. So with the kids, I talk about things like the pandemic and I talk about things like, losing friends or, sports not going the way that you want after you worked up, something so hard. But then I reframe it as to, but wait a minute, did you make better friends in that sport? Did you learn? Are you better? Did you bond closer with your family during the pandemic? And we pull it back to gratitude. And when I see the light bulb go off as to, okay, I know more things. I can talk about more things. I've, presented this to classrooms before. And at first, I'm the one suggesting ideas of things that they're grateful for. But after about 3 or 4 minutes of this, I've got hands all over the room, telling me about things that they're grateful for because it gets your brain thinking in a different way. And we can do the same thing for negative. I'm sure if I focused on the negative, it would compound and it would snowball into this huge thing of everybody's got hands of what they can focus on that's negative. Oh, yeah. But that's not what we want to teach. We want to teach the opposite of that.
Right. And it's so funny. What you say will trigger an idea, even if it's a negative thing. I mean, somebody used the example I saw recently. They said, just say to somebody, don't think about an elephant. And you're thinking about an elephant. So, yeah. What were you going to say, Glenn?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes along with preconceived notions that are limiting all of us every day in all of our lives. I know from a sales aspect, a lot of times people would say, when you're going in to meet with somebody, what are you going to do? What are you going to present? What are you going to propose? And I would say, I don't know. I haven't talked to them yet. I don't know what they need. And I think when you have that open-mindedness to go into a meeting, the other person probably has preconceived notions as well, but that open-mindedness kind of spread when you can just say, let's have a heart-to-heart conversation. Tell me about you. Let me tell you about me. And let's see if there's a way that we can help one another by being open-minded and not having those preconceived notions. A lot of times I think it's a lot easier to have conversations and to have more productive, whatever you're doing, X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how much are we limited by our preconceived notions, and how much do we get in our own way? Because I've been saying that a lot for 2020, that a lot of my friends need to get out of their own way and just let life happen.
Yeah, way more than you think. It's estimated that to 95% of our lives is spent on autopilot. And that number still staggers me when I say it. But if we think about all the things we do, from our waking up to our morning routine to, getting something to eat, that carries over into, checking our email, we are on autopilot so much of our day. If we would literally track our day, we'd probably find out it is probably about 95% of the time. And that's really sad, because all of the thoughts and everything that we're thinking is regurgitated thoughts and things that we've thought before. And we really need to bring in a catalyst to, create new thoughts and create, new ideas and new passions, and truly change.
Mm-hmm. I was just thinking, going back to the idea of restorative sleep. And we talk about that in terms of giving you energy and letting you feel, your mindset is energized as well. Is there, or have you experienced, or any of your clients experienced, just an increase in memory too?
Oh.
Because don't we store information while we're asleep? Doesn't it get compartmentalized? What do you know about that, Jennifer?
Yes, it's all intertwined. So our memory, our brain fog, our ability to regurgitate, forgetfulness, all these things are intertwined. So when we prime our brain with neuroplasticity and things like gratitude, especially before sleep, and telling ourselves we're going to have a regenerative, restorative, peaceful sleep, it's very powerful, and your brain responds to that. And doing that night after night, it's quite powerful what happens. And like I said, the energy you get when waking up feeling refreshed. Most days I wake up after 6.5, 7 hours and I feel refreshed. There's certain days where I'll be like, I need a little bit more. I'm going to go back to sleep and get 8 today. But for the most part, my regeneration happens very quickly. And I feel like just, ready to tackle the day. And I wake up without an alarm and I'm rearing to go. And I attribute all that to my mindset practices that I do.
All right. Well, I've always been accused of being a morning person, and I happen to know that I am. But if I go in too intense in the morning, then I do wind up like Len. I do need to, as I call it, reset the tumblers somewhere in the midday, and I can do that for 20 minutes or so.
Refuel your tank.
That's right. That's
yes.
right. And I get up, I stagger a little bit, but I'm pretty good. I feel lighter. Let's put it that way. I feel easier about everything. Okay. Have an idea. Does that make you dream more? And are the dreams more vivid, more positive? I'm sure that this is a very subjective question, or rather a very subjective answer. But I'm always intrigued by that.
Yeah, we're getting into a realm where I can't really speak to anything because I haven't studied it. But from my experience and what I've noticed is I do not have dreams anymore. I used to have these dreams of being chased, and it was the most bizarre thing. I was being chased, but I was going in slow motion. Like I could barely move and I know this was anxiety because I've looked these up and I'm like, okay, I was very anxious at this time. I don't have any of those dreams anymore. I almost sometimes have dreams where I'm inspired and I get downloads of things, like downloads of possibilities. Like, do I want to do this? And wow, I probably could do this because I'm getting it in a dream state now. And it's much more of the dreams like that. And then there's nights where I don't recall anything. So, but for sure, I don't get those, like I'm being chased and I'm going in slow motion.
Well, yes, I have had dreams like that before. I would say more of them are not being able to find things, not being on time, things not being where I placed. That's those sort of what I call anxiety dreams. Not as many like friendly, wonderful type dreams. A lot of just nights where I don't remember anything. How about my Blabbit co-host there, Dream Boy Glenn Ingram?
Well, one thing I think is interesting, that sometimes we have a hard time I guess, figuring out what our own body is. We hear this 8-hour sleep and things like this in the background that I find personally, I have better dreams and I feel better the next day when I have that 5 to 6.5 hours of maybe interrupted sleep versus if I take something to get that 8 hours. It's kind of like I have that hangover in the morning because my body probably didn't need the 8 hours, but I hear 8 hours and I try and get 8 hours when my body functions properly on 5 to 6. So sometimes do we need to listen to our own bodies instead of everything around us?
100%. Yes. Listen to what your body's telling you. If you're feeling great after 5 or 6 hours, chances are you may have a day every 3 or 4 days where you get 7 or 8 just because it's got to counteract that. But if it's telling you after 6, then go with it. Don't go back to sleep.
And again, this may or may not be an area that you specialize in or you've been focusing on. But how about foods triggering good sleep, bad sleep? What you take into your body, when you take in? Is there a positive cutoff time? Is there a positive stop doing that at least 2 hours before? That seems to be best practices as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I tie this into intermittent fasting because I found a profound effect with intermittent fasting. So I tend to not eat anything after 6, 7 o'clock at night. Nothing. I used to have a big salad right before bed, and I've even noticed taking that out, I sleep better, I feel better, I just overall am better. And then the next day, I'm not hungry. I used to be, but now I'm not hungry until about lunchtime. And then that's when I have my eating window between 12 and 6-ish, and I do all my calories for the day between that window. And I feel incredible energy since I've been doing that. And my sleep has improved drastically as well. Just in terms of needing less sleep, feeling like I'm getting deeper sleep, it's increased pretty well doing that. So I know I have clients that like to eat at night. They feel like they sleep better when they eat, or they wake in the middle of the night and feel like they need to eat something to get back to sleep. But it is something that you can overcome. And we found in the vast majority of cases when they do overcome that, they sleep better and do better and feel better.
Oh, I've known in my life, there were times where I would get into the habit of waking up and having something to eat in the middle of the night. And I would realize the next night that it would just trigger. And you have to nip that in the bud, or else it just stays with you.
Yes, it becomes a habit very quickly. Yeah,
it becomes right. What was that album from many decades ago? Vices soon become habits. Is that? It's like, be careful of that. Yes, indeed. Well, this has all been really fascinating, Jennifer. Really appreciate you giving us all of these insights. And Glenn, this is kind of a different Blabbit today, isn't it?
It is. I think, and it may just be because you have two warped people that both had the fortunate, I guess, just good fortune of having twin children. So we're weird people.
Okay, so karma's working in our favor.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
So if anyone would want to reach out with you and get in contact with you, Jennifer, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, they can reach me via email or on my website. Probably my website's the best way. It's either gratitudemission.org or Jennifer Garman with an A.xyz. And they can also reach me at my email address, which is thegratitudemission@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well,
cool.
Thank you very much. This has been good. We're grateful that you were here. No pun intended.
I'm very grateful to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
We'll see you very soon. And for everybody watching, you can close it, Glenn. Your turn.
Same bat time, same bat channel next week. Take care, everyone.